We're wrapping up our first year of homeschooling, so I'm going to share my first grader's experience with both Logic of English Foundations and All About Reading. He started the year with Logic of English Foundations A. He cruised through that pretty quickly, and then we started with Logic of English Foundations B, and a few lessons into that, we ended up switching over to All About Reading. So I'm going to share our experience with both of these programs and explain why we switched. Before I get into the details, I'm going to explain the context of my learner because he was not going into this knowing nothing at all. He had had 2 years in a Montessori kindergarten classroom, so he could identify all of the letters of the alphabet, but he couldn't consistently produce all of the phonemes for each letter. So he could say, if you showed him the letter A, he could say, that's the letter A, it says A, but he couldn't say A, every time. And so we took the little quiz that Foundations has, and because he didn't know all of them, because he didn't know them all super well, we decided to start with Foundations A to give him a strong foundation for reading. So because he was going into this with all of that experience already, we went through Foundations A pretty quickly. When we first started, I was doing all of the activities that are included, and it does include a lot of extra support. There are like kinesthetic activities, there are games, but we were finding that for him, a lot of the times when we were doing the games, it was getting really distracting. It got to be too silly, and now we're no longer focusing on what it is that we're trying to learn. So after that, we went back to doing like the bare bones of the curriculum, doing the lesson, doing the follow-up worksheets, and sometimes skipping those altogether. One major difference between Logic of English and All About Reading is that Logic of English does include handwriting as part of their curriculum, and All About Reading does not have any handwriting component. The way that they teach handwriting didn't feel very natural for us. My son had already learned how to form letters in kindergarten, and so it was really hard to go back and teach him this way that they teach it, because they go through and they're showing you each stroke of how to make a letter, so that when they say, you're gonna make a D, you're gonna do this stroke, and then up, and then, so they're teaching it stroke by stroke, and it was just confusing, and it felt weird to be practicing it. And then the letters end up not looking the way that we're used to a letter looking. So a lowercase a was not like nice and round, it was a very flat letter. It didn't look right. It didn't look like what we were used to. One thing that I did like in Logic of English that we haven't had in All About Reading is the sounding out the spelling of words. Now, All About Reading does have a separate program that's all about spelling, and we have started that, but it's not part of All About Reading, so you're not doing any of that spelling with it. And I did like that in Logic of English, it was all together. It was when we got to Logic of English Foundations B that things started getting really confusing for my son. I'm gonna read you a little bit of this lesson. This is what I, the teacher, am supposed to read to the learner. Are you ever lazy? When you are lazy, do you want to move around? No. Do you want to try to move as little as possible? Yes. Today we're going to learn about a special vowel sound in English. It is a lazy vowel sound. We call this lazy vowel a schwa sound. So then we're introducing a schwa, which is an upside down lowercase letter E. And my son was just so lost. Another example is like the word this. They had TH underlined and the number 2 written over it to show that it makes its second sound. It says V instead of so the numbers over the words was getting really confusing too. There were some aspects we really liked. I thought the readers were really well done. Some of them are like this. They were in the workbook and you have to cut out the picture and then attach it to the right page. But they're really smart about it because they put pictures that are similar and words that are pretty close. So you really need to read each word to get the context of it. Like this one says dog and hat and wig, and this one says pups and hats. So if you were just skimming it, you might not get it right. So you really have to pay attention to each word. Thank you. Then we switched to All About Reading. I went ahead and started him on level 1, back to the beginning, just to make sure, once again, that he's getting that strong foundation. In the first lesson, you're learning 4 sounds. You do a little activity, do a little review of those things, and then you get to jump on over to the reader. And in the very first lesson, you get to read a story. Now, it's only using those letters, but it is a little story. And that was really motivating for my son to get right to the reading. And for it to be like actually something funny. Like this, he thought that it was hilarious. All About Reading also has cards with words and sounds, and Logic of English does too. They both come with a lot of stuff. Another thing that I liked in All About Reading are these flip books that you would make every once in a while. I did not like the letter tiles. They recommend putting magnets on the back of them and then using a whiteboard, but I couldn't find one that was big enough that would also fit on the table. So we just used them on the table, and it was a pain to set them up every time. Now, they do have an app with these on it, and if I had an iPad, I would use it. As you work through the book, you start getting these lists that are meant to build fluency and stamina with reading. And these did get a little frustrating for my son because they are long and it's a lot of words and he would get tired, and that's the point of building your stamina. It did help to use different colored highlighters to make it kind of fun, and sometimes I would give him a chocolate chip after each section. By the end of level 1, you will have read 3 readers, and all the stories are pretty good. Like, they're actually a story. This was the last story that we read in the reader last week before we finished the program. I don't yet have a review for All About Spelling because we're only a few lessons into that. Our plan for next year is to continue with All About Reading level 2. In the meantime, over the summer, we're gonna go back and read through these readers. And I think we'll also give the Foundations B readers a chance over the summer, just for something different to try. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions.